The summer afternoon started like any other in the quiet ranch town of Willow Creek. The sun hung low, warm and steady, spreading golden light across the open fields. The sky was wide, the breeze soft, and the only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the steady rhythm of cicadas. It was the kind of day when everything felt peaceful, the kind of day that seemed too calm for anything unexpected to happen. Caleb Morgan was out on the far side of his family ranch, checking the fences the way he did every week. It was simple work, but he liked it. The routine gave him time to think, and the open land always made him feel grounded. With his hat pulled low to shield his eyes from the sun, he walked along the fence line with a quiet confidence that came from years spent living close to nature. He was only 27, but people often said he carried himself like someone older, someone who had learned responsibility early in life. Ever since his father passed away, Caleb had taken care of the ranch almost entirely on his own. He didn't complain, not out loud anyway. The land was part of him, and he loved it even on the hardest days. He had just finished tightening a loose wire when the first strange sound reached him. It was faint, barely noticeable over the wind, but something about it made him pause. It was the sound of water moving fast, much faster than it should have been this time of year. The river that ran near the ranch usually stayed calm until the heavy fall rains. In summer, it hardly made enough noise to notice unless you were standing right beside it. Caleb straightened and listened more carefully. The sound came again, louder now, mixed with something else. A thump, a scrape, a muffled cry that made his heart jump in his chest. He didn't hesitate. He started running toward the river, his boots pounding against the dusty ground. As he reached the small hill that overlooked the old county bridge, he saw the water level had risen so high it nearly touched the wooden boards. A sudden rush of melted snow from the mountains must have come down faster than anyone expected. Then he saw the car. A small blue car was pressed against the side rail of the bridge at an angle, half the wheels lifted off the ground. The front end hung over the rushing water, rocking back and forth as if one more push might send it, slipping into the river below. Inside the car, a girl was trapped. She looked young, maybe 16, maybe 17, with wide, frightened eyes that searched the surroundings as if hoping someone would appear. Her hands were tight on the steering wheel, and her lips moved in silent panic as the car shook again. Caleb didn't think twice. He went down the hill in long strides, shouting to her that he was coming. He could barely hear his own voice over the roar of the river. But the girl seemed to notice him. Her eyes locked onto his, and even from a distance he could see the relief in them. She wasn't alone anymore. When he reached the edge of the bridge, the boards beneath him trembled from the force of the water, hitting the structure. The storm upstream must have been stronger than anyone expected. Caleb knew the bridge wasn't in good condition. It had been scheduled for repairs for years, but this was worse than he had ever seen it. "Don't move," he called out, lifting his hands slightly as if to calm her. "I'm going to get you out." The girl nodded quickly, though her face was pale and tight with fear. She looked like she was trying not to cry. Caleb moved slowly, testing each wooden board with his foot before putting his full weight on it. The closer he got to the car, the more he could feel the bridge swaying. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and river water. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. The weather was changing fast. When he reached the driver's side, he saw that the door was stuck. The frame of the car had bent just enough to trap it. The girl tried to push it open, but it didn't budge. "It won't open," she said, her voice shaking. I can't get out." "That's all right," Caleb said with calm he didn't entirely feel. "We'll go another way." He moved around to the passenger side. That door opened with a sharp creak, and he reached inside. The girl's hands trembled as she unbuckled her seatbelt, and as soon as she was free, she grabbed his arm like it was the only stable thing in the world. "It's okay," he said gently. "I've got you." She nodded but didn't let go. He helped her out of the car, and the moment her feet were on the bridge, a strong gust of wind pushed the vehicle forward. Caleb pulled her backward just in time. The car slipped completely over the edge, turning once before the river swallowed it in a rush of white water. The girl gasped, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. Caleb steadied her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're safe now." he said. That's what matters. But they weren't completely safe yet. The bridge groaned under their weight, and Caleb guided her quickly back toward solid ground. He stayed slightly ahead of her, making sure each board was steady before he let her step on it. When they reached the dirt road leading up to the hill, she let out a long, shaky breath, and tears finally spilled from her eyes. Caleb helped her sit on a large flat stone at the side of the road. She hugged herself tightly, trying to calm her breathing. He crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance but ready to help if she needed anything. "My name is Caleb," he said quietly. "What's yours?" "Emily," she whispered. "Emily Carter. How are you feeling, Emily?" She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Scared, but better, thanks to you," he nodded. "You did well. You stayed calm." She gave a faint laugh that was half a sob. "I didn't stay calm at all. You did enough," he replied. "You listened. And you trusted me. That helped." Emily looked at him closely then, studying his face as if trying to memorize it. Her eyes were still glassy, but there was something strong in them too. Something determined. "I won't forget this," she said softly. "I won't forget you." Caleb felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. It was an unexpected feeling, a mix of protectiveness and quiet admiration for the girl sitting before him. But he didn't say anything. He simply gave a small nod. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, mixing with the gathering clouds to create a soft, glowing light around them. The sound of the river still rushed in the distance, but it no longer carried the same sharpness it had earlier. It was calmer now, almost steady. A few minutes later, Caleb helped Emily stand. The road wasn't far from the nearest ranch house, and he walked with her until they reached it. The family who lived there took her inside, giving her water and blankets while someone called for her parents. Before Emily went inside, she paused at the doorway and turned back to Caleb. "Really," she said, her voice a little stronger now. "I won't forget this day. Or you." He gave her a gentle smile. "That's kind of you to say." Then she added something unexpected, something that would stay in his memory longer than he expected. "You saved my life. Maybe someday I can repay you." He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." But Emily only smiled, a thoughtful, almost mysterious smile, and said, "Still, remember me." And then she was gone inside, and Caleb was left standing in the warm evening light, listening to the distant quieting of the river, not knowing that this moment, this ordinary day turned extraordinary, would come back to find him years later. A promise he didn't know he'd made had just been set in motion, and Emily Carter would return one day, carrying those words with her. The days after the accident passed quietly for Caleb, but something inside him felt different. Life on the ranch moved at its usual steady pace. Horses to train, fences to mend, fields to water, but every now and then, his mind drifted back to the girl he had rescued on the bridge, Emily Carter, 16, bright-eyed, gentle, and filled with a kind of hope that seemed to shine even through her fear. Caleb hadn't expected someone he met for such a short time to stay in his thoughts. Yet she did. Not in a loud, distracting way, but in a soft, steady one. A memory that returned whenever the wind carried the scent of the river, or when he crossed the old bridge. He would catch himself wondering where she was, whether she had recovered, whether she still thought about that day. But he didn't allow himself to think too much. Ranch work didn't leave much room for drifting thoughts, and he liked it that way. Hard work kept him grounded. Every sunrise brought new tasks, and every sunset left him tired enough to sleep deeply. It was a simple life, but it was his life, and he took pride in it. Meanwhile, Emily's world changed in ways no one around her understood. When she returned home after the accident, she tried to go back to her everyday life, school, homework, spending time with friends, family dinners, but something inside her felt new. Like the moment on that bridge had opened her eyes to the world in a different way. She had been scared that day, truly frightened, but what stayed with her the most wasn't the fear. It was the calm, steady expression on Caleb's face as he reached into the car to help her. It was the sound of his voice telling her everything would be all right. It was the safe feeling she had when he held her arm and guided her across the bridge. She thought about that moment often. At first, her parents assumed she was still shaken from the accident. They checked on her constantly, asking if she needed anything. She always told them she was fine, and she was. But she also felt something else, something she didn't fully understand yet. She didn't just feel grateful. She felt connected. She tried to explain it to herself in simple terms. Caleb had saved her life. He had been the first person she had ever trusted so completely in such a short time. When she looked into his eyes, she had felt something steady, something warm. She had felt safe. As weeks passed, that feeling didn't fade. Instead, it grew quietly. Emily began to pay attention to things she had overlooked before. She took schoolwork more seriously. She spent more time helping her mother around the house. She became more thoughtful, more mature. As if the experience on the bridge had pushed her forward somehow. And though she didn't talk about Caleb to anyone, not even her closest friend, he became a quiet part of her daily thoughts. Sometimes, she wondered what he was doing. She imagined him walking across the open fields of his ranch, leading horses with calm patience, checking fences under the wide blue sky. She didn't know much about ranch life, but the little she did know made her picture him surrounded by nature and peace. She imagined him living with the same steady strength he had shown the day he rescued her. She also felt a small, gentle ache whenever she remembered his smile. Not sadness exactly, something softer, something longing. One afternoon, about a month after the accident, Emily sat at her desk with a blank sheet of paper in front of her. She didn't know why she started writing. It just felt right to put her thoughts down. She wrote a simple letter addressed to the Morgan Ranch. She thanked Caleb again. She told him she hoped he was doing well. She told him she would always remember what he did for her. She ended the letter with her full name, a careful signature, and a quiet wish that someday life might let their paths cross again. But she never sent the letter. She folded it neatly and placed it inside a small wooden box on her shelf. Then she wrote another letter, and another. Every few months, whenever she felt the memory return strongly, she wrote again, little updates about her life, her growth, her thoughts. She wrote about how the rescue changed her view of bravery, how it taught her to be grateful, how it made her believe that there were good people in the world who acted out of kindness alone. But she never mailed any of them. She didn't know if she would ever send them. She didn't know if she would ever see Caleb again. But somehow, writing to him made her feel close to the memory, close to the moment that shaped her. Years passed. Emily finished high school with good grades. She grew taller, her features softening into gentle maturity. She learned to make decisions with confidence. She set goals, and she worked hard to reach them. The experience on the bridge had taught her that life was precious, and she didn't want to waste a moment. She went to college in another town but kept the box of letters with her. In the quiet moments, when campus was still and the wind moved softly through the trees, she would take out one of the letters and read it, remembering the rancher boy with the calm voice. Meanwhile, Caleb's life continued steadily. He took over the full responsibility of the ranch. It was hard work, but he handled it with patience. Sometimes neighbors came to help, and sometimes he helped them in return. In a town like Willow Creek, everyone knew everyone, and kindness was part of daily life. But Caleb wasn't one to talk about his feelings, not even with people close to him. If anyone asked him about the day he rescued the girl on the bridge, he simply said he did what anyone else would have done, and maybe that was true. But deep down, the memory stayed with him too. Sometimes, while mending a fence or brushing down a horse in the fading light, Caleb's mind would drift to that day. He remembered Emily's wide, frightened eyes, the way her voice shook when she thanked him, the determined little smile she gave before she went inside the ranch house. He remembered the way she said, "Remember me." He didn't understand why those words stayed with him. He certainly didn't expect to see her again. She was young, living far away, building a life that probably had nothing to do with small ranch towns. He told himself that she had surely forgotten about him by now, but he remembered her anyway. He remembered the softness in her voice, the spark in her expression, the hope in the way she looked at him. And on quiet nights, when the stars were bright above the ranch, he wondered where she was, what kind of person she had grown into. He didn't know that she was growing into someone strong because of him. By the time Emily turned 23, she had transformed completely from the frightened teenager on the bridge. She had become confident, independent, and full of purpose. Her heart was soft but steady, and her mind was clear about what mattered to her. And Caleb, though he didn't realize it, had become part of her purpose. She never forgot the feeling she had that day. Not the fear, but the calm that followed, the calm brought by a man she barely knew. A man who risked himself to help her without hesitation. In her eyes, he had shown her what true kindness looked like, what true strength felt like. He had left a mark on her heart, a mark gentle but deep. She kept the letters she had written over the years. There were many now, each filled with pieces of her life she wished she could share with him. She often wondered if he still lived on the ranch, still spent his days under the open sky, still carried himself with that quiet strength. Then one day, life gave her the chance she had been waiting for without even realizing it. A job opportunity opened in Willow Creek, only a few miles from the Morgan Ranch. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something she had even expected. But the moment she heard the place mentioned, her heart stirred. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was the promise she had once made at 16. Whatever it was, she packed her things with a calm, clear decision. She was going back. She wasn't sure what she would say when she saw him. She didn't know if he would remember her the same way she remembered him. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had waited long enough. The day was coming. The day she would stand in front of Caleb Morgan again. The day she would keep the words she once whispered at 16. The road leading back to Willow Creek looked almost exactly the same as Emily remembered. The open fields stretched wide under the morning sun. The fences ran long and straight, and the distant hills looked soft and peaceful. A gentle breeze moved through the tall grass, brushing the landscape like a slow wave. Everything felt familiar, yet strangely new, as if time had changed the town only in small, careful ways. Emily drove slowly, her heart beating faster the closer she got to the place that had lived in her memory for 7 long years. She had imagined this moment countless times, how she would feel, what she would say, how Caleb might react. But imagination was one thing. Reality was another. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she turned onto the narrow dirt road leading to the Morgan Ranch. She hadn't contacted anyone. She hadn't called ahead. She hadn't even told her family the real reason she chose the job in Willow Creek. All she said was that she wanted a quiet place, somewhere peaceful to begin her new chapter. But deep inside, the truth glowed like a quiet flame. She was here because of him, the man who had saved her when she was 16, the man who had stayed in her thoughts for years, the man she had never, ever forgotten. The ranch finally came into view, a long stretch of land bordered by white fences, dotted with horses grazing calmly. The main house stood farther back, surrounded by a tall oak tree and a clean wooden porch. A few barns were scattered around the property. Their red paint faded a little by the sun, and near one of the barns, she saw him. Caleb Morgan stood with a rope in his hand, guiding a young brown horse in slow circles. His posture was relaxed but strong, his movements patient and sure. Even from a distance, Emily recognized the calmness he carried. He looked older, not old, but more mature, more settled in his skin. His shoulders were broader, his jawline a little sharper, his hair slightly longer beneath his hat, but his presence was exactly the same. Gentle, steady, grounded. Emily pulled the car to a stop and stepped out, her heart suddenly so loud she wondered if he could hear it. The gravel crunched under her shoes, and the soft sound made Caleb turn his head. For a moment, he simply looked at her. His brown eyes studied her face with polite curiosity, the way anyone might look at a stranger who unexpectedly pulled into their yard. Emily swallowed, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement twist inside her. He didn't recognize her. Not yet. She took a slow breath, gathering the courage she had been building for 7 years. Then she walked toward him, her steps steady even though her heart wasn't. Caleb gave the horse a gentle pat before letting its rope fall lightly to the ground. He took a few steps toward her, stopping when they were a short distance apart. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice calm and warm, the same voice she remembered from the bridge. Emily's lips curved into a soft, hopeful smile. "It's been a long time," she said quietly. "But, do you remember me?" Caleb blinked, surprised by the question. He looked at her again, this time more carefully. His eyes lingered on her features, her expression, her posture, her smile. He frowned slightly, not in confusion, but in deep thought. Then something in his eyes changed. Recognition flickered, slowly, softly, like a memory waking up after a long sleep. "Wait," he said, studying her face. "Are you that girl from the bridge?" Emily nodded, her smile widening. "Yes. I'm Emily." Caleb removed his hat, running a hand through his hair as if he needed a moment to process the sight of her standing in front of him. When he finally spoke, his voice carried genuine surprise. "Well, I'll be," he murmured. "I never thought I'd see you again." Emily laughed lightly, a warm sound that eased her nerves. "You should have. I told you to remember me." Caleb shook his head in quiet disbelief. "I remembered," he admitted. "I just didn't think you would." Emily stepped a little closer, her eyes shining with a mix of emotion, joy, relief, and something deeper that had lived inside her for years. "I didn't come here by accident," she said softly. "Oh?" Caleb asked, raising an eyebrow. "What brings you back to Willow Creek after all this time?" Emily inhaled gently, then gave him the honest truth. "I came to find you." Caleb's eyebrows lifted in surprise, but before he could speak, she continued, this time with a playful smile that carried a hint of boldness. "And," she added, "I came to marry you." Caleb's mouth fell open just slightly, not in shock, not in alarm, but in pure, genuine astonishment. He stared at her, trying to decide if she was joking, but the seriousness in her eyes told him she wasn't. He let out a low, breathy laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's a mighty big statement to make so early in the morning." Emily laughed softly. "I've had 7 years to think about it." Caleb opened his mouth as if to respond, then closed it again, unsure of what to say. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Something about her confidence amused him, warmed him. "Well," he said slowly, "you certainly grew up." "Yes," she said gently. "And I didn't forget you. Not once." Caleb looked at her with a mixture of wonder and confusion. "I'm flattered," he said, shaking his head lightly. "But why? Why come all this way just to see me?" Emily lowered her gaze for a moment, then lifted it again, her expression sincere. "Because you were the first person who ever made me feel safe. You were the first person who made me believe in good things. I don't know how to explain it, but something about that day stayed with me. It didn't fade. It grew." Her voice stayed soft, but the truth in it was unmistakable. "I didn't come to surprise you or confuse you," she said. "I came because I needed to see you again. I needed to know if the person I remembered was real." Caleb's heart felt oddly warm, touched by her words in a way he couldn't hide. He glanced at the ground for a moment, collecting his thoughts. When he looked back at her, his eyes were softer. "Well," he said slowly, "you found me. That much is certain." Emily smiled. "And I'm not leaving right away. I took a job here. So, you'll be seeing me often." Caleb gave a small laugh. "I guess I will." There was a long pause between them, not awkward, but quiet and full of possibilities. The breeze moved around them, rustling the grass, making the moment feel almost like a scene from a story neither of them knew they were writing. Emily looked around the ranch, taking in the view she had carried in her imagination for years. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "It's home," Caleb replied. Emily met his eyes. "I hope someday. It feels like home to me too." Caleb felt something shift in his chest, a gentle stir of something he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't know what it meant yet. But he knew one thing. He was glad she came. "Come on," he said after a moment, his voice softer now. "Let me show you around." Emily fell into step beside him as he led her across the ranch, pointing out different areas, the stables, the pastures, the training field. She listened with bright interest, asking questions, laughing at his small jokes. The ease between them surprised Caleb. It felt natural, familiar, as if the distance between 16-year-old Emily and 23-year-old Emily wasn't a distance at all, but a path leading her right back to him. As they walked, Emily felt lighter than she had in years. She had found him. He remembered her. And even though he didn't say it out loud, she could tell he was glad she was there. Truly glad. The moment she had dreamed of for 7 years had finally happened. And in Caleb's eyes, she saw something she had hoped for, but never dared expect. The weeks after Emily's return seemed to pass like gentle waves, steady, calm, and full of small moments that slowly pulled her and Caleb closer together. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing forced or rushed. Instead, their connection grew quietly, in soft ways that felt natural to both of them. Emily found herself spending more time at the ranch than anywhere else. She told herself it was because she loved the peaceful atmosphere, the sunlight on the fields, the sound of horses moving in the distance, the smell of fresh hay. But deep in her heart, she knew it was because of Caleb. He carried a sense of calm that made everything around him feel safe. Even on the busiest days, when work piled up and the sun was heavy, he moved with a quiet rhythm that made the world seem slower, lighter. Caleb, on the other hand, had begun to look forward to Emily's visits more than he wanted to admit. Her laugh brought a spark to the ranch he hadn't felt in years. Her energy lifted the quiet days, her presence softened the long evenings, and her bright curiosity reminded him of things he hadn't paid attention to in a long time. She made the ranch feel new again. One morning, Caleb arrived at the barn and found Emily sweeping the floor with determination. Her hair tied back, a stubborn strand escaping to fall over her forehead. She looked up when she heard his footsteps and gave him a cheerful smile. "You're starting early today," Caleb said. "I wanted to help before you came," she replied, brushing the hair away from her face. "Thought I'd surprise you." "Thought I'd surprise you." Caleb smiled softly. "I'm surprised every day." Emily felt warmth flutter in her chest, though she pretended not to notice. She leaned on the broom, watching him as he walked closer. "Teach me something new today," she said, excitement in her voice. He raised a brow. "Like what?" "Anything. I want to learn everything about ranch life." Caleb let out a gentle laugh. "Everything? That might take a lifetime," Emily answered without hesitation. "I don't mind." Caleb's smile softened. He didn't respond right away, but something in his eyes changed, a quiet understanding that her words meant more than they sounded. He handed her a halter. "All right then. Today you'll learn how to lead a horse properly." Emily followed him eagerly. Together, they walked into the pasture, where the horses grazed peacefully in the sunshine. Caleb chose a calm, older mare named Maple, who lifted her head as they approached. "Talk to her softly first," Caleb said. "Let her know you're there." Emily moved slowly, speaking in a gentle tone, and Maple responded with a soft nudge of her muzzle. Caleb's eyes lit with pride. "You're a natural," he said. Emily's smile grew. "Good teachers help." They spent the next hour walking Maple around the pasture, Caleb guiding Emily with patient instructions. Whenever she made a mistake, he corrected her kindly, never once losing his steady calm. As Emily held the rope, she felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just that she was learning new things, it was the way Caleb shared his world with her without hesitation, without fear, without pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was genuine, kind, steady, and she found herself drawn to him more with each passing day. Later that afternoon, after finishing their work, they rested on the porch with glasses of cool lemonade. The breeze was soft, carrying the fresh scent of summer across the yard. Caleb leaned back in his chair, watching the clouds drift lazily across the blue sky. Emily watched the fields, quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you ever think about leaving the ranch?" Caleb shook his head gently. "This place is home. My whole life is tied to it." Emily nodded. "I understand that. But, does it ever feel lonely?" Caleb hesitated, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Some days more than others." Emily turned to look at him, her voice soft. Has it felt lonely? Lately? Caleb's gaze met hers, and for a moment, neither spoke. He didn't answer right away, but the warmth in his eyes spoke louder than words. No, he said quietly. Not lately. A breeze lifted Emily's hair, and it took all her strength not to smile too widely. She looked down, hiding the joy warming her chest. Days turned into weeks, and each moment between them added another layer to their connection. One afternoon, the town held a small summer gathering at the old community park. Caleb didn't usually attend such events. He preferred quiet evenings at the ranch, but Emily convinced him to go. You can't hide on the ranch forever, she teased. Come out and see people. We're outnumbered already, he replied dryly. By who? You, he said with a small grin. Emily laughed. Then I'll protect you. Caleb chuckled but didn't argue further. So, he went. At the gathering, people welcomed Emily warmly and greeted Caleb with friendly smiles, some curious, some knowing. A few older women whispered to each other when they saw the two arrive together, their smiles hinting at harmless town gossip. Emily didn't mind. She felt proud to walk beside him. They played simple games, shared snacks made by the townsfolk, and joined a group watching children perform a small skit. Emily noticed Caleb relax more as the day went on. He even laughed when a little boy tried to teach him a clumsy dance move. You're good with kids, Emily commented softly. Caleb shrugged. Kids are easier to understand than adults. Emily tilted her head slightly. Am I easy to understand? Caleb looked at her for a long moment before answering. No, he said gently. You're something new. Something I'm figuring out. Emily felt her heart flutter. Is that a bad thing? Not at all, he replied. It's interesting. As they walked back to the ranch under the soft glow of sunset, the air held a quiet peace. Neither wanted to break. But deeper connections bring deeper truths. One evening, Emily found Caleb in the barn long after sunset. The lantern cast a warm glow around him as he carefully brushed maple, his expression thoughtful. You're up late, Emily said. Caleb looked up, a little surprised to see her. So are you. Emily walked closer, her tone gentle. Are you thinking about something? Caleb hesitated, then nodded slowly. Just wondering what direction life is going. Emily stood beside him, hands folded gently. Is that worry? Or something else? Caleb paused before answering. Both? I think. She waited, letting him speak at his own pace. I've lived quietly for so long, he said. Then suddenly, you came back. Emily felt her breath catch softly. You changed the rhythm here, Caleb continued. In a way I didn't expect. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Is that a good change? Caleb's eyes softened as he looked at her. Yes, it is. The barn felt quiet around them, filled with the soft scents of hay and the gentle warmth of lantern light. It felt like a moment that belonged only to them. Emily spoke again, her voice steady but full of feeling. I'm not here to confuse your life, Caleb. I'm here because I care. And because something inside me always felt connected to you. Caleb listened quietly, his expression touched. You bring something warm to this place, he said. And I didn't know how much I needed that until you came. Emily felt her heart swell with a deep, tender emotion she had carried for years. Caleb took a slow breath, as if gathering courage. I'm not used to opening up, he admitted. But with you, it feels easier. It feels right. Emily stepped a little closer, her voice soft but full of certainty. I'm not going anywhere. Caleb held her gaze. And in that moment, a gentle understanding passed between them, quiet, but strong. A beginning. A promise. A silent truth forming between two hearts that had been waiting for each other longer than they had realized. The bond between them was no longer just a memory from the past. It was becoming something real, something strong, something worth holding on to, and neither of them felt alone anymore. The days after the quiet moment in the barn felt different, softer, warmer, and filled with a new understanding that neither Emily nor Caleb could ignore. Nothing had been directly said about love or a future together, but something important had settled between them. Something steady, something true. Emily woke up each morning with a lightness in her heart, knowing she would see him. And Caleb started each day with a quiet smile he didn't even notice, but others surely did. The townspeople whispered kindly behind his back now, saying it looked like Caleb Morgan had finally opened the door he kept closed for so long. He didn't correct them, he didn't deny anything, not even to himself, but still Caleb was careful. He moved slowly, gently. While Emily's feelings were clear and bright, his emotions were quieter, like seeds planted deep in the soil, needing time to grow. He didn't want to rush into anything, not out of fear, but out of respect. He wanted every step with Emily to be steady, thoughtful, and real. Emily understood this. And she was patient not because she was waiting for him to change, but because she enjoyed every moment with him just as it was. One late afternoon, the sun was setting in soft peach colors across the sky. Emily and Caleb were walking along the pasture after a long day of work. The horses grazed peacefully around them, and the breeze carried the warm scent of summer grass. Caleb stopped near the fence and rested his arms on the top rail, watching the horizon. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to watch sunsets alone every evening." Emily stood beside him. "And now?" "Now." Caleb paused, then looked at her with a gentle smile. "Now, I hope someone's there with me." Emily's heart felt full. She didn't speak. She simply leaned on the fence beside him, letting their silence say the rest. But as peaceful as life had become, one thing sat quietly in Emily's heart, something she felt but hadn't voiced aloud yet. She had returned to Caleb with a purpose, one she had spoken boldly the day she arrived. "I've come to marry you." But she hadn't brought it up since then. She wanted him to understand her intention, but she also wanted him to move at his own pace. She didn't want her feelings to rush him. Still, a part of her wondered. One evening, Emily was helping Caleb stack hay in the barn. They worked side by side, their movements comfortable and familiar by now. Caleb lifted the last bale and set it neatly on top of the stack, wiping the sweat from his forehead with his arm. "You're getting better at this," he teased. "I told you I learn fast," Emily replied, grinning. "You do," he said softly. "You really do." There was something about the way he looked at her, steady, thoughtful, that made her heart flutter. For a moment, she felt the words rising in her chest, the ones she had been holding back, but she swallowed them gently. The timing didn't feel quite right. Instead, she walked toward the stable door to let in the evening air. Caleb followed, standing beside her as the soft orange glow washed over the fields. "Emily," he began, his voice serious enough to make her turn toward him fully. "There's something I've been wanting to ask." Her breath caught. "What is it?" He hesitated, then spoke calmly. "Are you happy here? Truly happy?" Emily didn't even need a second to answer. "Yes," she said. "More than I've been in a long time." Caleb nodded slowly, as if her words brought him a quiet relief. "I worry sometimes," he admitted, "that you left your world behind for too much quiet, too much simplicity. Life here isn't always easy." Emily stepped closer, her voice warm and sure. "I didn't come here for an easy life, Caleb. I came here for a meaningful one. And I came here because this is where my heart feels steady." Caleb's eyes softened. "Because of me? Because of the person you are," she said. "Because of the calm I feel around you. Because 7 years ago, you showed me something that stayed with me." Caleb lowered his gaze briefly, touched by her honesty. Then she added quietly, "And yes, because of you." He looked up again, meeting her eyes with a warmth she had only seen in small moments before. "Then I'm glad you came back," he said softly. "More glad than I can say." Emily felt her heart thrum with happiness. She had waited years to hear something like that. Days passed, filled with small moments of laughter, shared work, warm conversations, and a growing closeness neither tried to hide anymore. They became so comfortable together that even the town noticed. People often smiled when they saw them walking side by side or sitting together at the diner. One morning, Caleb received a visit from Mrs. Turner, an older woman from town known for her gentle gossip. She smiled knowingly at him. "You look brighter these days," she said with a little wink. "Something, or someone, has warmed this ranch." Caleb didn't respond, but he couldn't hide his smile. And Mrs. Turner laughed kindly. That same afternoon, Emily found Caleb repairing a fence near the far pasture. She walked toward him with a basket of fresh lemonade she had made, and sat beside him on the grass. "I heard Mrs. Turner visited you," Emily said playfully. Caleb raised a brow. "Already? Small town," she reminded him, laughing. He shook his head lightly. She asked questions. "And what did you say?" "That I'm glad you're here." Emily's breath caught at his simple, honest answer. She felt warmth spread through her chest. As she poured lemonade into 2 glasses, Caleb added quietly, "Truth is, you've brought life back into this place. Back into me." Emily looked up, surprised by his openness. "I didn't know if something like this could happen again," Caleb admitted. "I didn't expect it." Emily's voice softened. "Sometimes good things come when you're not expecting them." Caleb held her gaze. "You came back into my life like a sunrise." Her heart melted at his gentle comparison. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping lemonade and watching a pair of horses wander across the field. After a moment, Caleb spoke again. "Emily, can I tell you something I haven't said yet?" She nodded, her heartbeat quickening. "I didn't forget you," he said. "Not once, even after all those years." Emily felt tears prick gently at her eyes, not sad tears, but tears of gratitude. "I knew you remembered," she said softly. "Some part of me always believed it." Caleb smiled faintly. "When you walked back onto this ranch, it felt like something clicked into place, like a missing piece finally came home." Emily felt her emotions swell. She reached out gently and took his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. Caleb didn't pull away. Instead, he held her hand with a quiet certainty that said everything she needed to hear. "Then let me tell you something too," Emily whispered. "I came back because I felt the same way." Caleb lifted her hand slightly, holding it between them. "Emily, I don't know what the future looks like, but I'd like it if you stayed in it." She smiled through the soft sting of happy tears. "I'd like that too." The evening wind moved through the grass, soft and warm. The world around them felt peaceful, almost glowing, as if it knew something important had just been spoken. Caleb squeezed her hand gently. "As for what you said the day you arrived," Emily's cheeks warmed. "About marrying you?" He nodded, smiling shyly. "I'm not saying yes or no today." "I know," she said softly. "I didn't expect you to. But," Caleb continued, "I will say this. I'm not afraid of the idea. Not anymore." Emily's heart filled with joy, quiet, steady joy. "That's enough for me," she whispered. They stood together in the soft evening light, the fields glowing golden around them. The world felt calm and safe, just like it had 7 years ago on the bridge. But now the feeling was deeper, stronger, and shared between them. Emily leaned her head gently on Caleb's shoulder, and he rested his cheek lightly atop her hair. They didn't need grand words. They didn't need sudden promises. What they had was real. What they had was growing. What they had was the beginning of a life built gently, honestly, and together. And for the first time, both of them felt the future open wide in front of them. Not rushed, not uncertain, just beautifully possible. A quiet beginning of something that might one day become a forever.